Did you see the FBI's Vault FOIA publication about your organization?
Yeah, there were a lot of empty pages and a lot of hoola about nothing. Again, people who want us to be feds and want everything about us to be automatic, everything we do is somehow justification of feds. Whether we get arrested, we're feds. We don't get arrested, we're feds. We wear masks, we're feds. We're unmasked, we're feds. People will see anything to prove that we're feds. I don't know if we actually were some big federal thing, why would the FBI do that, I guess? You know?
It had a lot of those redactions were about the identities of CHSs, right? Which seems to imply that you guys have, not that you are feds, but that there are feds among you.
No, and it's hard to determine the specifics of that because, again, you're arguing on the basis of information that is absent. And there are a lot of connections which would need to be evaluated based on information present. And also it should be noted that somebody who speaks to the FBI about a certain matter doesn't necessarily have to be from a certain source. I mean, that's anybody who they found relevant on anything. I mean, it's 1,000 pages or something to that effect. But you look at the general things. You look at what we know the FBI does when they want to mess with a group, when they want to get into a group. What do? It's drugs, guns, and violence. They get people to sell drugs, they get people to buy guns, or they get people to be violent. And if we were an organization that was controlled by or heavily influenced by federal agents, why aren't we doing any of those things? Not only why aren't we doing them, but why are we so heavily disciplined in preventing anything of that nature from happening? Right? So, you can argue that, oh, well, the FBI, they'll try to mess with groups. Of course they will. You can argue that they'll try to interfere with things. Of course they will. But it's not a proper response to that reality of the political landscape to shut yourself off and become, a hermit as the world gets worse and worse. Political organizing is something that needs to be undertaken with a strong respect for the risks of the world, and not a dismissive disposition towards them. What was your question?
I was asking about, we know that there have been CHSs, like you said, it hasn't amounted to something. I was asking, have you had experience?
We know that the FBI has published documents saying they've spoken to people about Patriot Front. That's all that's known. Anyways, are you saying, are there any uncovered entrapment plots?
Have you ever, experienced a member trying to convince you to do crimes?
In a lot of these cases, there are people legitimately in the world who wanted to do stupid things. I'm sure we've all come across them. And in the organization, if anybody suggests or espouses that they want to commit a violent act, or they want to do something which involves firearms, we don't do anything involving firearms. Or they want to, or that perhaps they have issues with drug abuse. This could be a legitimate issue that the person is dealing with, or this, in the case of drug abuse particularly, we try to help the individual, but anybody who is veering into these issues with drugs, guns, or violence, largely we will try to correct and then expel. And if it is an egregious enough matter, we will prevent any communication whatsoever in any format, indefinitely, at all times, forever, from happening with that person. So in the cases where that happens, and it is rare, but you run across people who have bad discipline. They have lack of understanding of what political organizing is meant to be, and sometimes they have a bad day. But if that were to happen, that person would be removed. And past that point, do you uncover if it was an entrapment plot if you cut all ties with the individual? It's hard to say. Usually when that happens, and somebody says, hey, do you want to buy a gun? And you say, no, I'm going to stop talking to you now. They don't say, oh, wow, look for the cameras. You're on FBI's Most Wanted. Wow, you just passed the test. No, that doesn't happen. So it's a very complicated thing, but we do take our security very seriously, if that's what you're asking.
Fair enough. I do.
And obviously, again, if Patriot Front was an organization that was meant to cause violence, we were meant to engage in entrapment plots, we were meant to do all these illegal things, I really feel like we would have done something like that by now. I really feel like we would have done something like that, but we haven't. There hasn't been a single instance of anybody assaulting anybody. I don't know what you will say, but I don't count that. There hasn't been a single instance of anybody shooting anybody, hitting anybody with a weapon, nothing like that. We're very peaceable.
That reminds me, what happened with there was a default judgment against you and 99 Patriot Front John Doe.
Yeah,
right?
So you see, when you're talking about matters of a legal variety, I will be unfortunately under the advisement of my own conscience not to delve into specifics.